Technology at its best,
you
you
love
know.
it. You love it.
Alright. Did you go to a public school or a Catholic school?
I went to a Catholic school. I went to Westside Catholic, Sacred Heart, St. Agnes, and St. Boniface. And then I went to Mater Dei for high school.
Did anyone talk to you about vocations within the church as a possible career?
When I was growing up, our pastor at Sacred Heart, Father Daywig, talked about priesthood a lot with me. We had a lot of conversations. And there were people along the way who kind of encouraged me to think about it. There were a number of folks who talked about it as a possibility.
When did you first talk about your interest in vocation?
I think I was in 5th grade when I first talked about the possibility of priesthood. It was when I had started serving at Mass, and Father Daywig would ask me on a regular basis if I'd ever thought about priesthood. And so that's when I first kind of became interested in the idea and the possibility. I didn't tell too many people about it because I wasn't sure how people would react to that. I didn't even know what I thought about it. I just knew that it was something that was interesting to me.
Did you have an idea you were interested in that before then?
No, 5th grade I think was really the first time that I thought about it, consciously at least. Maybe when I was really young I entertained the idea, but 5th grade was the first time that I remember thinking about priesthood.
Were you nervous about it?
I was nervous about thinking of priesthood and particularly like with my friends, because middle school and junior high can be a tough time, because you want to fit in, you want to have good friends, you don't want to get made fun of, all those things, and I was worried about that when I was in junior high, and so I didn't really tell anybody that I was thinking about priesthood, not even my parents. I didn't tell anybody until my senior year of high school. So it was much, much later before I kind of publicly talked about the possibility of priesthood, mainly because I just didn't want to, I didn't want to get made fun of, honestly. Which is sad, because I went to a Catholic school, so that should be something that, it's not something that I should be afraid of. It's something that I should be free to talk about, but that wasn't the case.
What did you do to help make the decision?
I prayed a lot, particularly my senior year of high school. I prayed a lot about who God was calling me to be and these other struggles that I had, because I really wanted a family. I really wanted a wife and children of my own. So that was really hard to kind of let go of. That idea was hard to let go of. So I remember I prayed a lot, and then I found out that a good friend of mine was also thinking about priesthood at the same time. And so we started to talk and have a conversation, and then I started to meet with another priest and talk about that possibility, and that was really helpful. When I started to kind of talk about it and ask questions about it, that was probably the most helpful thing for me.
How did others react to your decision?
Everybody was supportive. There was not a single person who said, you really shouldn't do that. So all this fear that I had, that people were going to make fun of me or that people wouldn't think it was a good idea, all of that was completely unfounded. Everyone that I told said, oh, you'll be great, it's a good choice. I always thought that you would make a good priest, so there were I had a lot of really supportive friends and family.
Was anyone opposed to it? If so, how did you overcome that?
Yeah, there was never anybody that really pushed against my decision to go into priesthood, except me. I was probably the one that was pushing against it the most. Again, because of my desire to have a family, but fortunately for me, I had really good friends and good family to help.
What do you hope you will accomplish with your mission?
Ooh. What do I hope I will accomplish with my mission? That is a great question. Really, my goal every day is to help people to come to know Jesus, to help them to grow in their relationship with Him, to help them to find answers to the questions that they have in their hearts, to help them to find mercy and peace and to be fed and nourished and to belong to a place and to belong to God. But I think all of that could be summarized in saying the goal of my life is to help every single person encounter and follow the person of Jesus Christ.
Do you feel you have made any sacrifices to answer this calling?
I do think I've made some sacrifices to answer the calling, although I have to say that those sacrifices have been repaid to me in other ways. For example, I mentioned like I had this desire to have a family. But I feel like that sacrifice in giving up a biological family has been repaid to me by having a tremendous parish family. Like I have more children now than I could ever need or want. There are a lot of people that call me father, not just because that's a title, but because I play a role as a spiritual father in their lives. And for me, it's God's way of responding to that desire to have a family. Any other sacrifices that I've made, I think are sacrifices that everybody makes in their vocation in one way or another. In the same way that a man would sacrifice a relationship with all women for a relationship with one woman, I have also sacrificed a relationship with a particular woman for a relationship with the church. So we all have to sacrifice something, and God repays those sacrifices if we're faithful in the way that we live them out.
What advice would you give to other parents whose children come to them?
Parents play a huge role in the lives of priests. And I'll tell you, in particular, mothers play a huge role. Because I'm the vocation director for the Diocese of Evansville, which means I help men who are thinking about priesthood, I always get a kind of an insight into what kind of motivated them to enter seminary. And nationally, this is a really interesting statistic, the most important influence in the life of a priest is their pastor. The second most important person is their mother. And so parents, I think they need to recognize, particularly in our culture today, that their sons can be happy being priests. I think there's a big stigma out there or a misconception that priests are really lonely and unhappy. I am not lonely and I am not unhappy. I love the life that God has given to me. And I think parents kind of need to get over that hump of saying, well, I'm not sure my son can be happy doing this. And sometimes I think parents can really get in the way of their sons really considering priesthood. Maybe because their sons are afraid that they're not going to be supportive, or maybe the parents are just blatantly not supportive of their sons, which is a really sad situation, and it makes it really difficult on the men who are trying to figure out who God's calling them to be. So what I would say to parents is you need to love your sons, and you need to love God. And if God wants your son to be a priest, then you can't fight that, because you're fighting your son's happiness if you're fighting God in that battle.
What advice would you give to other people thinking about this?
If a young man came to me and said they were interested in becoming a priest, I would say a few things. One, that you really need to develop a personal relationship with Christ. So you have to pray and you have to take advantage of the sacraments, particularly go to Mass and go to confession on a regular basis. Secondly, I would say that you need to get involved in the life of your parish. So you can serve at Mass, you can read at Mass, you can work with the St. Vincent de Paul and visit people in their homes. There are all kinds of ways that people can get involved in their parish. So that's the second thing that I would say. The third thing is you need to find a priest that you can talk to and that you trust and ask questions about priesthood and get to know what this life is really like. So those are the three things that I would say.
Is there anything you would like to share about your job? Favorite things you get to do?
My favorite thing about priesthood is being a father, which may sound a little strange since I don't have any biological children. But, as a spiritual father for people, I get to accompany people in moments of great joy when they welcome children into the world, and in moments of great sadness when they lose someone that they loved or they're going through a really difficult time. And people welcome me into those moments, which is a very privileged opportunity for me as a priest, that people invite me into their lives in that way. And I think that's the most profound thing for me. I mean, I love the sacraments and I love preaching, but to be a father to people is the most fulfilling aspect of my ministry.
What is your favorite thing to do when you are not working?
So I spend a lot of time in my office, and I have to respond to a lot of emails, and I have to do a lot of paperwork for different things. So my favorite thing to do really is get my hands dirty. I like to work out in the lawn. I like to work in the garden. I like to play golf. I like to go to movies. I spend time with my friends. Probably what you spend your free time doing is probably not so different than what I spend my free time doing, except maybe you don't like to mow the lawn and I kind of like to mow the lawn. So we each have our own thing.
What is your favorite food?
My favorite food. That is a really good question. Right now, my favorite food is coconut ice cream. It's delicious. French vanilla. It's like a French vanilla kind of coconut ice cream. It's good.